What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Spencer doing the deck profile here for the Dogmatika Invoked Spellbook deck. And I'm going to show you like the version that is like the best version of it. Like the new support that came out is kind of insane. I think it makes the deck like significantly better. So I'm going to show you the deck profile. It's like 99.9% the same except for like the last two cards that you see on this deck profile. So I'll explain like what you can do to replace it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the Dogmatika package. Nothing too crazy here. A Fleur-de-Lis, a Maximus, 3 Ecclesia. The card's actually very important. I used to run this at 2 in other decks, like a generator deck, but like when this card comes out, you kind of have to play this. It's also just really good. Like this searches a lot of things, and it's a complete searcher of the archetype, so it does do a lot. This card is much better than I think I give it credit for. And 2 Alistairs, so I do run 3 of the Magical Meltdown. I think this is fine. I think honestly sometimes when you see both of them in your hand, it's just so bad, and I think this reduces that chance just a little bit, or at least enough to make it interesting. Because you want to see this more than you want to see this, because you're trying to activate spells, and you can see there's obviously a lot of spells in this archetype, but that's the big reason for it. 1 Jowgen, of course. It's the thing you want to special summon off of your Spellbook of Judgment. You're right, your opponent can't special summon monsters. 3 Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. 1 DD Crow. It is searchable. It's not just a random one of. It is searchable through Shureg and Ferjit, right? If you activate and add your servant, send Ferjit, and then you can search Maximus. Maximus can banish this to special summon itself, and then you can spend Shureg to the graveyard, which lets you add a level 1 Winged Beast monster, which is what DD Crow is. The card's just kind of good in the format against the top 3 decks, so I think it's definitely an auto include, here. 3 Droll and Lockbird. This card is good. It's also a target that you can summon from the deck off of Spellbook of Judgment if you don't get 3 spells activated. It's a wind monster, and Invoked Raijin is like unironically a very good card. Book of Moon is still good, and this card does it every single turn while also being a body. So I think that it's just super necessary. It's also a spellcaster monster. There's too much synergy, right? You can normal summon Droll and Lockbird and activate Spellbook of Knowledge in the most extreme emergencies, which you never know. Like I did a combo video recently, or a test hand really, and I actually had to do this exact thing, and it ended up getting me through and giving me a good end board. So you just need it. 3 Spellbook of Knowledge. This card is Pot of Greed in this deck. I don't know if you've seen this. If you haven't checked out my gameplay video or my other test hand videos, you should go do that. What ends up happening a lot of the times is you'll normal summon Alice the Invoker, go into Magistus Maiden Artemis, or it's just called Artemis, I guess, and then you can just send it off with Spellbook of Knowledge and still use Invocation. So quite literally, it is the exact same thing as Pot of Greed. It makes no difference between your plays if you send this to the graveyard or not. Normally, this is some sort of cost, but in actuality, it's not for that specific interaction. Also, most of the time when you go through your Ecclesia plays, it's also you have an extra Maximus and you have Fleur in your hand, so you don't really need this body. It's literally just a 1500 attack body at that point. So you could also spend it with Spellbook of Knowledge. This card's insane. 1 copy of Spellbook of the Master. I used to run multiple copies of this, but the Dogmatika Ritual stuff is really good, and I've never really needed to use this twice in a duel. The Spellbook stuff is just there mostly for the cleanup follow-up interruption is kind of the best way I can describe it. The Invocation, I only run it at 1. I've never played it at 2. I've never understood it. It's not a card you want to see in your opening. It's like kind of a brick, actually. If your opponent stops your fusion, right, you just like normal summon Alistair, try to activate this and like Borreload Savage Dragon it. Yes, you'll never be able to use it again, but I would say more often than not, like only having one of these is like the perfect thing. It's all you need. That's how I've played it, at least. 3 Spellbook of Secrets. It's great follow-up. It's great flex spot. It does a whole lot for the deck. 1 Spellbook of Judgment. You're only going to want this to go off 1 time. So all these other ones that copy it, the duel never goes on that long. If you open up Spellbook of Judgment and you get Jowgen out, you win 99% of the time. I've never needed to reuse Spellbook of Judgment to search a bunch of cards. It's just kind of silly. Spellbook of Wisdom's kind of funny. It's kind of good. Not really great going second, obviously. But the idea maybe is that you can normal summon Alistair, they activate, something like Inburm, or same thing with Ecclesia, and that could be like a big difference for you. But most of the time, it's something that you're going to search at the end phase with Spellbook of Judgment to clean up any mess that your opponent might have, right? In the small cases that you can't go for, game off of the first turn, right, your opponent probably is passing, after you get rid of their normal summon. Then you search this in your hand. That means your opponent can't out you with Dark Rule no more or anything like that. Spellbook of Fate. This card is good. This card is very, very good. It is... I always think of it as that Sprite card, but the better version of it, right? You don't have to banish any of your cards. You're banishing useless cards that have absolutely no use in the graveyard. Or it's a Book of Moon. Or it returns a spell and trapped. It just does so much. It does an incredible amount of work. I love this card. And honestly, is a big reason why the deck is so good. 3 Super Polymerization. I just feel like this is a card you probably have to play. I don't run Garua, which is obviously a good card to send to the graveyard. But that is actually... It's very playable if you're not playing specifically White Zoa. So if you are not, you would obviously include Garua in this list. And again, I'll talk more about it at the end, about kind of the replacements. Like the only reason 5-Handed Dragon here is because of White Zoa. So you probably have at least one more Super Poly target. You could also run Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, I suppose. But the good thing is, at the very least, is that the top deck in the format is like tier branded, something like that. And which obviously has a very good synergy. Like you normal summon Invoked or Alistair. Your opponent tries to like impermanent, let's say, which is like the best case scenario. Or they try to hit you with Predaplant, the red one. I can't think of the dang name. But the Predaplant that they all summon out, and it just targets and negates it because it has a Preda counter on it. You obviously can just activate Super Polymerization and fuse it, and then you get to pop a card. So it's like you're getting a lot of advantage off of it. That's kind of the only reason why I do this. Like my target is Mud Dragon. That's kind of like my one general one. But I like maybe you want to place this with Garua anyways. Maybe this is a little bit more relevant. I'm not exactly sure. It could be. So I guess that's kind of like up to your discretion. Or if you feel like you can cut something out of this. Although it's a pretty tight extra deck for sure. 3 Magical Meltdown. This card is great and even much better with Spellbook of Judgment. So it does. This is equal to 2 spells. Obviously, you activate Judgment, Meltdown, and then Invocation is 2 by itself. 3 Now to Your Servant. Thank goodness this is off the ban list. It should have never been on there. This card's actually getting significantly better. It's always been good though. But it's not the craziest card ever. It's just a good card. This is Dogmatika Calamity. So obviously this goes along with this package of Dogmatika Tricks, the new continuous spell, and White Zoa, the Dogmatika. So this is the point where you can come down to your replacements or how you feel you want to do this. So this is what I'm probably going to do IRL, because this is the deck I'm going to be playing in this format. Sorry, I just want to search it up. I forget the name of it. So there's also another continuous spell that's like semi-similar than the new one. It's just much worse because this searches on activation. So this card says if you special summon 1 ritual monster by a spell or effect, you can look at either player's extra deck and send 1 card from it to the graveyard. So not bad, right? It has a very literally like almost the same effect as this, but it just doesn't search upon activation. Now its other effect is if you special summon 1 fusion monster by a spell or card, you can target that monster for the rest of the turn. It gains attack equal to its original. Also, it can only attack position monsters your opponent controls. Like that's the cool thing is that you can, well, first of all, like getting rid of an opponent. Like the main reason you're going to use this card, it's searchable off of Ecclesia. That is a spell card you can immediately activate. So you could run this card, and you could also run White Knight of Dogmatika. It's not a bad card by any stretch of imagination. So the only thing is that normally you use this, like you have 1/2 of the either ritual or the monster, and you search the other one with the continuous spell. That's what makes this so good. And obviously this ritual monster is insane. So you can do that. You can still run the ritual package and, run the continuous spell and also the White Knight. Or the other thing, if you wanted to play it a little bit safer, is Book of Moon. You could run Book of Moon at 3. Reason being is that this is a great out for Jowgen. Like your opponent normal summon something, you can activate Book of Moon. Other benefit, obviously, to spell cards. So if you have 1 spell to use, you won't be able to use, unfortunately, during your opponent's turn, but it's more important to get Jowgen out, obviously. You can just Book of Moon your own monster to activate that additional spell. So that's like up to you. I can't wait for these cards to come out. I don't know when they are, but hopefully soon. It's always random, obviously, when this does. But man, when these cards come out, this deck is just so decent. It's the most fun deck I've had in playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In forever. Like I said, I'm going to be playing this deck the entire format, which is great because the format just started. On to the extra deck. Five-headed dragon is just simply a target for White Zoa, so this could be your Garua replacement. Invoked Makaba, Titan Cloud of the Ash Dragon, nothing too crazy here. Invoked Agodes, I never know how to say this stupid card. Invoked Raijin, I just think this, I guess you could take this out and go for Garua too, but man, this card is so good. 2 Nadir Servant, you definitely want to have at least 2. You want to have it for the follow of Nadir, and you're probably going to want to pop another card your opponent controls too off of Maximus. I would play this at 3 if I could. Mud Dragon of the Swamp, this is just a super poly target. I guess this is another one that you could technically, part ways with, but man, for Garua, but this card, it does so much. Your opponent it's so hard. Your opponent has to get through so many layers, right? Your normal end board isn't crazy. It's not better than Tier. It's not better than Spite, but the thing that makes it so good is that you're going to have Disruption in the spell and trap zone. Obviously, Jowgen's going to be out. You're going to have hand traps in your hand. And then on top of that, you could also have a Wind Pegasus Agnister. It's like your opponent can't possibly, most of the time, have the outs for all of these cards at once. Herald of the Arclight. So if you're playing the Book of Moon package, you have 2 extra slots for Garua and maybe even Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. And maybe that's objectively right, but of course, if you get Maximus and you had Ecclesia in your hand or something, you could search the Ritual White Knight and then send the other card so you have the Ritual in your hand. Look, it becomes good. With White Knight in this card is great because you get to send something like Titan Clad. So then you get to send 2 just basic forms of interruption to the graveyard. That's always the benefit of playing the package. Because then Maximus can send something like Shureg and Herald, or Shureg and Wind Pegasus. And if you have the other continuous spell, you get to send another card. It's just all interruption. So really, I do like playing this because I like to have more options, in the extra deck. Also, the great thing, too, of course, is with Nadir Servant, you can send Herald to search White Knight, and then this searches the Ritual spell, which, of course, is also just very, very good. So there's plenty of ways, and I think the White Knight package is perfectly fine, and it's probably the version I'm going to go with, not the Book of Moon version. But if you think the Ritual package is bad, obviously you have other options. Ferajit is great because it works well with this, but of course, if you have Jowgen in your hand, this is one of the few decks that can send it back into the deck. Secure Gardna, Magistus, Moon Maiden, and then Salamangreat Almirage. The reason you're running all 3 of these, you think, oh, maybe you just want to run Magistus, but this card is good because it protects you from destruction. You aren't playing the Fire Invoked monster, Purgatrio, but there's so many times where I've needed to go when I have Ecclesia and Alistair in my hand. I want to be able to go through Maximus, and I cannot do that with Magistus or with Artemis, obviously. So that's the justification for using all 3 of these. Onto the side deck, I actually am pretty happy, and I think this is the side deck I'm going to go with. Normally, I don't really care about the side deck, but I do care about this deck a lot, so I've kind of actually put some real thought into the side deck. 3 Lightning Storm, 3 Dark Ruler, 3 evenly matched, so I want to be able to be as much prepared as I can, against back row decks as humanly possible. Also, Dark Ruler plus evenly is good against Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck. I can't imagine there's any sort of situation where this is not good to have, combined together. This is actually pretty interesting theory, but when I go second, I take out the ritual stuff regardless of which version of the deck I'm playing, because they're just not good cards going second, right? If you see this in your opening hand going second, you're probably losing. So what I do is I take it out. So I take these 3 cards out, I put in cherries, and I want to feel prepared for the top 3 decks. This card I think is really good to hit against Tear Lament. I guess you could also run Elf because it's good against Tear Lament as well, but if you're playing against Tear Lament, you're going to be sending this card to the graveyard to banish all the copies anyways. I think this card is probably devastating against Splight, from what I can imagine. And of course, Mathmech is also, I think this is obviously a super flex spot. If there's another deck that starts making its way up in the meta, of course, you can just replace it. But I think for right now, I think, going second against Mathmech, this card has got to be pretty good because there's no real payoff for them, when they set their trap. And they'll pretty much be playing into it. You can activate it at any time. Though I guess you probably wait till the second summon, because I think the 4 that searches can negate something the turn it's special summoned. And I guess they can go into that too, but this card obviously is much better than just dealing with your opponent's one negate, assuming you don't have something like DD Crow or whatever the case may be. I really like this Winter Cherries, and I like the way that I can replace it very easily with a package that is designed to go first. But I do keep this thing going first because these cards give you the best chance to win, right? And you always want to give yourself the best chance to win. It's not like this is the end of the world, right? If this comes into the field, you have a 4,000 attack body that can probably bounce most of your opponent's monsters, and they probably can't do anything about it because they're extra deck monsters. But, you know, most of the time your opponent is going to be able to set up something to stop something in the process of this ritual summon, and you don't want to waste any cards. So that is kind of I didn't realize how long I went, but sometimes when I'm, you know, I like these decks a lot, I try to explain my choices like really in depth, and hopefully you guys like that. Let me know what you guys think about this deck in the comment section down below. Other than that, that's going to do it for today's video, and I'll see you guys next time.